I watched my sister Bethany stride across our grandmother's backyard party, flanked by two stern men in dark suits, her face radiating the kind of triumph reserved for moments of absolute victory. She had spent 3 months hiring private investigators to prove I was lying about my struggling marketing company, convinced I was some kind of con artist. But as those investigators approached our family gathering, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The metallic glint in their hands wasn't notepads or evidence folders. It was handcuffs, and they weren't looking at me. 3 months earlier, my life looked completely different. I was Hortense Walsh, 32 years old, running a small digital marketing company from the converted garage of my modest home in suburban Denver. The business had been struggling ever since my largest client, a local restaurant chain, had pulled their contract 6 months prior when the owner decided his nephew could handle their social media for free. I was slowly rebuilding, taking on smaller projects and working 16-hour days to prove that my company, Walsh Marketing Solutions, was more than just a pipe dream. My sister Bethany, on the other hand, seemed to have everything figured out. At 35, she worked as a financial advisor at Sterling Wealth Management, one of Denver's most prestigious firms. She lived in a gleaming downtown condo, drove a brand new BMW, and never missed an opportunity to remind our family about her success. Growing up, Bethany had always been the golden child while I was labeled the dreamer, the one whose head was always in the clouds. The tension between us reached a breaking point during our monthly family dinner at our grandmother's house. I had just landed a new client contract worth $50,000 with a growing tech startup. They needed a complete rebrand and digital marketing overhaul. And after weeks of presentations and negotiations, they had finally signed with me. I was bursting with excitement, finally having proof that my business was gaining real momentum. As we sat around Grandma's dining room table, I shared the good news with our family. The room erupted in congratulations from our aunts, uncles, and cousins. But I noticed Bethany's expression immediately sour. She set down her fork and leaned forward with that skeptical look I knew all too well. $50,000. She questioned, her voice cutting through the celebration. That seems awfully convenient, Hortense. What's the company name? Who are the principals? What's their credit rating? The entire table fell silent. Our grandmother, who had been beaming with pride moments before, looked between us with concern. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as Bethany continued her interrogation. I mean, you've been struggling for months, and suddenly you land this massive contract? It just doesn't add up mathematically. Small marketing firms in Denver typically start with contracts in the 5 to 10,000 range. Bethany, that's enough, our grandmother said firmly. But the damage was done. I could see doubt creeping into the faces around the table. I'm just looking out for the family, Bethany replied smoothly. We all know Hortense has a tendency to exaggerate her successes. Remember when she claimed she was going to be valedictorian in high school? That comment stung because it was partially true. I had been overly optimistic about my class ranking, but I had still graduated with honors. Bethany had a gift for taking my small embellishments and turning them into character assassinations. I stood up abruptly, my appetite completely gone. I don't have to prove anything to you, Bethany. The contract is real, the client is real, and my business is real. If you say so, she replied with a shrug that conveyed complete disbelief. I gathered my purse and kissed our grandmother goodbye, ignoring the tension that had settled over the room like a heavy blanket. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning of something much worse. Over the following weeks, I noticed strange things happening. Bethany called several of my previous clients under the pretense of market research for her financial planning business. She contacted the Better Business Bureau to check my company's registration status. She even drove by my house multiple times, always claiming she was just in the neighborhood. The breaking point came when Mrs. Henderson, my elderly neighbor, mentioned that a woman matching Bethany's description had been asking questions about my work schedule and whether I really seemed to be running a legitimate business from home. I confronted Bethany over the phone, my hands shaking with anger. What are you doing, Bethany? Why are you investigating me like some kind of criminal? I'm protecting our family from embarrassment, she replied coldly. Grandma's been bragging to her friends about your success, and when this all comes crashing down, she's going to be humiliated. There's nothing to come crashing down. Why can't you just be happy for me? Because I know you, Hortense. You've always been prone to fantasy, and am not going to stand by and watch you drag our family name through the mud. That's when she revealed the extent of her campaign against me. I've hired Whitman Investigative Services to conduct a thorough background check on your business. They're professionals, not family, so they'll find the truth. I felt like the world was spinning around me. My own sister had hired private investigators to prove I was lying. The betrayal cut deeper than any childhood rivalry or sibling disagreement we had ever had. This wasn't just doubt. This was a systematic attempt to destroy my credibility and my relationship with our family. I can't believe you'd go this far, I whispered into the phone. I've already paid them $5,000 up front, Bethany said. Matter-of-factly. The truth will come out, Hortense. It always does. As I hung up the phone, I realized that everything I had worked for was under attack from the person who should have been my biggest supporter. The sister who had shared a bedroom with me for 18 years, who knew my dreams and fears better than anyone, had decided I was her enemy. The foundation of trust that families are supposed to be built on had crumbled beneath my feet, and I had no idea how to rebuild it. The private investigators Bethany had hired were thorough professionals who took their job seriously. Marcus Thompson, the lead detective, was a former police officer in his mid-40s with over 20 years of investigative experience. His junior partner, Sarah Flynn, was a sharp-eyed former accountant who specialized in financial fraud cases. Together, they operated Whitman Investigative Services with a reputation for uncovering the truth, no matter how well hidden. When Bethany first approached them with her concerns about her sister's business, they treated it as a standard family dispute case. She had presented them with what seemed like legitimate concerns: sudden financial success without clear explanation, a history of embellishment, and potential impact on elderly family members who might be financially supporting a fraudulent venture. Thompson and Flynn began their investigation with routine background checks on Walsh Marketing Solutions. They verified my business registration with the state of Colorado, checked my tax filings through public records, and reviewed my professional credentials. Everything appeared to be in order, but they were paid to be thorough. They interviewed my neighbors under the pretense of conducting a community safety survey. Mrs. Henderson confirmed that I worked long hours and frequently had client meetings in my home office. The mail carrier mentioned that I received regular business correspondence and packages. Even my teenage neighbor, Jake, who mowed lawns in the summer, confirmed that he often saw me on video calls through my office window. For 6 weeks, I lived under surveillance without realizing the full extent of what was happening. I noticed the same dark sedan parked on my street at different times of day. I caught glimpses of people taking notes while sitting in coffee shops where I met clients. Once, I could have sworn someone followed me to the bank, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid. The stress was eating away at me. I found myself double, checking locks, wondering if my phone calls were being recorded, and feeling like I was living under a microscope. My work suffered because I was constantly looking over my shoulder instead of focusing on delivering results for my clients. The situation reached a breaking point when I confronted Bethany at our usual coffee shop downtown. I had asked her to meet me, hoping we could resolve our differences before they permanently damaged our relationship. "I know you hired investigators," I said as soon as she sat down across from me. "I can feel them watching me, Bethany. This has to stop." She stirred her latte calmly, not meeting my eyes. "If you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about. I'm your sister. How can you do this to me? We grew up in the same house, shared the same bedroom, told each other everything. How did we get to this point?" "We got to this point because you've been lying to our family," she replied, finally looking at me with cold determination. "Grandma has been telling her entire bridge club about your amazing business success. She's so proud of you that she's considering investing her savings to help you expand." This was news to me. Our grandmother had never mentioned wanting to invest in my business, but the thought of her risking her retirement money on my behalf made my stomach churn. "I would never take Grandma's money," I said firmly. "And I'm not lying about my business. Why is it so hard for you to believe that I might actually be successful?" "Because I know how business works, Hortense. I see real financial statements every day. I know what legitimate success looks like. And your story doesn't add up." That's when she revealed the true extent of her investigation. She had paid Thompson and Flynn $5,000 up front for a comprehensive investigation into my business practices, financial stability, and client relationships. They had 6 weeks to produce a complete report that would either vindicate my claims or expose what she was convinced was an elaborate deception. "They're the best in the city," Bethany said with satisfaction. They've caught embezzlers, insurance fraudsters, and con artists. If you're running some kind of scam, they'll find it. I felt violated in a way I had never experienced before. Professional investigators were dissecting my life, analyzing my every move, and preparing to judge whether my achievements were real or fabricated. The weight of that scrutiny was crushing. But there was nothing I could do to stop it. What I didn't know was that the investigation was about to take a completely unexpected turn. Thompson and Flynn had been conducting their investigation with professional diligence, but they were starting to feel uncomfortable about the case. Every piece of evidence they uncovered supported my claims about my business. My clients were real, my contracts were legitimate, and my financial records showed exactly what I had claimed. A small business owner working hard to rebuild after a major setback. The turning point came when Bethany's payment check to Whitman Investigative Services bounced. Flynn discovered the returned check when she was balancing the firm's accounts. At first, she assumed it was a simple banking error, but when she called Bethany to resolve the issue, she noticed something troubling in my sister's response. "Oh, that must be a mistake with automatic transfers," Bethany said quickly. "I'll handle it right away." But the check bounced again when Bethany attempted to resubmit payment. This time, Flynn's accounting background kicked in, and she decided to investigate the source of the payment problem. What she discovered made both investigators realize they were looking at the wrong person entirely. Bethany's personal checking account showed irregular deposits and transfers that didn't match her salary as a financial advisor. Large sums of money were moving in and out of her account in patterns that suggested something far more serious than a simple bounced check. Thompson and Flynn found themselves facing an ethical dilemma. They had been hired to investigate me, but their client appeared to be engaged in financial irregularities that warranted investigation. After consulting with their attorney, they decided to quietly expand their scope while completing their original assignment. What they discovered about Bethany would soon turn the entire investigation upside down and reveal that the person who had hired them to uncover fraud was perpetrating a much more serious crime herself. Thompson and Flynn spent the next 2 weeks conducting a careful investigation into Bethany's financial activities, while maintaining the appearance of focusing solely on my business. What they uncovered was a sophisticated embezzlement scheme that had been operating for over 18 months. Bethany's position at Sterling Wealth Management gave her access to dozens of client accounts, many belonging to elderly retirees who trusted her to manage their investments. She had developed a system of skimming small amounts from these accounts over time, amounts that were unlikely to be noticed immediately by clients who weren't actively monitoring their statements. The scheme worked by taking advantage of market volatility. When the stock market had a bad day, Bethany would transfer slightly more money out of client accounts than actual losses warranted, pocketing the difference. She would then generate falsified statements showing the losses as purely market-related. To clients who questioned declining balances, she would explain that market downturns were affecting everyone, and that patience was required for long-term growth. Flynn's accounting expertise allowed her to trace the pattern across multiple accounts. Small withdrawals of $2,000 to $5,000 were made regularly from accounts belonging to clients in their 70s and 80s. The total theft was staggering, nearly $200,000 over 18 months. The investigators discovered that Bethany had been particularly targeting clients who had cognitive issues or were socially isolated, people who were less likely to question their statements or seek second opinions about their investments. Among her victims were a widow with early-stage dementia, a retired teacher who lived alone after her children moved away, and several elderly men who had lost their wives and were struggling to manage finances they had never handled before. Meanwhile, I remained completely unaware of what the investigators were discovering about my sister. I was focused on growing my legitimate business and had actually landed 2 additional clients exactly as I had predicted I would. The tech startup's rebranding project was going exceptionally well, and they had already recommended me to another company in their network. Thompson began to piece together why Bethany had hired them in the first place. Through discreet inquiries at Sterling Wealth Management, he learned that the company was planning a routine compliance audit for the following month. Bethany would have known about this audit well in advance, and she would have realized that her embezzlement scheme was likely to be discovered. The investigator theorized that Bethany's campaign against me wasn't just about sibling rivalry or skepticism about my business success. She was planning to destroy my credibility publicly, then disappear with the remaining money she had stolen before the audit could expose her crimes. By discrediting me first, she could create a family crisis that would distract everyone from her own disappearance. Flynn discovered evidence of Bethany's escape plan when she found travel websites in her browser history and inquiries about opening bank accounts in countries without extradition treaties with the United States. Bethany had been systematically preparing to flee the country with nearly $200,000 in stolen retirement funds. The most damning evidence came when Bethany, growing increasingly desperate about the bounced payments, made a critical mistake. She attempted to bribe the investigators with stolen money. During a tense phone call about the overdue payment, Bethany offered to pay Thompson and Flynn an additional $10,000 in cash if they would expedite their investigation and provide her with damning evidence against me before our grandmother's 80th birthday party, which was scheduled for the following weekend. "I need concrete proof that she's lying," Bethany insisted. "Something that will make it clear to the entire family that they can't trust her. I'll pay you extra for quick results." Thompson, suspecting what he was dealing with, agreed to meet Bethany in person to discuss the payment arrangement. With Flynn's help, he secretly recorded the conversation in which Bethany offered him $10,000 in cash to fabricate evidence against me. During that recorded conversation, Bethany made several incriminating statements. She admitted that she didn't actually believe I was committing fraud but wanted to destroy my credibility anyway. She revealed her knowledge of the upcoming compliance audit at her firm and her plans to leave the country shortly after our grandmother's party. Most damaging of all, she offered to pay the investigators with money she described as coming from client investments that won't be missed. When Thompson pressed her about the source of the cash, Bethany became defensive and inadvertently revealed her knowledge of specific client account details that she shouldn't have had access to for personal use. Thompson and Flynn now had recorded evidence of Bethany's attempts to bribe them with stolen money, along with financial records proving her embezzlement scheme. They faced a serious ethical decision about how to proceed. After consulting with their attorney and reviewing their professional obligations, they decided to contact the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. The case involved interstate banking fraud, elder abuse, and a sophisticated embezzlement scheme that warranted federal investigation. Special Agent Patricia Williams was assigned to the case and began working closely with Thompson and Flynn to gather additional evidence. They developed a plan to allow Bethany's scheme to culminate at our grandmother's birthday party, where they could arrest her in the act of attempting to destroy my reputation with fabricated evidence. What Bethany didn't realize was that her plan to humiliate me publicly was about to become the stage for her own spectacular downfall. The investigators she had hired to destroy me were about to present evidence of her crimes to our entire family, with federal agents standing by to make an arrest. The trap was set, and Bethany was walking directly into it. With just 2 weeks remaining before our grandmother's 80th birthday party, Bethany's desperation reached a fever pitch. The compliance audit at Sterling Wealth Management was scheduled to begin the Monday after the party, giving her an extremely narrow window to execute her plan and disappear. She called Thompson multiple times each day, demanding updates on the investigation and growing increasingly agitated when he stalled for time. The investigators needed to maintain their cover while coordinating with federal agents to build an airtight case against her. "I need those results," Bethany insisted during one particularly heated phone call. "The party is this Saturday, and I want to present your findings to the entire family. This is my chance to prove that Hortense has been deceiving everyone." Thompson played his role perfectly, expressing concern about rushing the investigation while secretly recording every conversation. "These things take time, Mrs. Patterson. We want to make sure our findings are absolutely solid before we present them." "I'm paying you extra to make this a priority," Bethany snapped. "I need something concrete that proves she's lying about her business success." What Bethany didn't realize was that Thompson and Flynn had already completed their investigation into my business and found absolutely nothing suspicious. My client contracts were legitimate, my financial records were clean, and every aspect of my business operation was exactly as I had described it. During this same period, I received the best news of my career. The tech startup that had hired me for the $50,000 rebranding project was so impressed with my work that they recommended me to their parent company. The new contract was worth $75,000 and would establish my business as a serious player in the Denver market. When I shared this news with our family, Bethany's reaction was explosive. She called me immediately after hearing about the new contract from our cousin Dave. "This is ridiculous, Hortense," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Now you're claiming another massive contract? Do you really expect anyone to believe this coincidence?" "It's not a coincidence," I replied. feeling a mixture of excitement about my success and sadness about her continued hostility. Good work leads to referrals. This is how businesses grow. I'm going to prove you're lying, she said with venom in her voice. At Grandma's party, in front of everyone, the truth is going to come out. That conversation filled me with dread about the upcoming celebration. Our grandmother had been planning this party for months, inviting extended family members from across the country to celebrate her milestone birthday. The thought of Bethany turning it into a spectacle to humiliate me made me consider not attending at all. But I couldn't disappoint our grandmother, who had always been my strongest supporter. She had believed in my business dreams when no one else did, offering encouragement during my darkest moments after losing my biggest client. I decided I would attend the party and face whatever Bethany had planned. What I didn't know was that Bethany had already made arrangements for Thompson and Flynn to attend the party as her guests, planning to have them present their findings about my business to the assembled family members. She had told our grandmother that she was bringing some business associates who were interested in investment opportunities, a lie that would soon be exposed along with all her others. During this same period, Bethany made her most critical mistake. Growing increasingly desperate about the timeline, she met Thompson in person to deliver the promised $10,000 bribe. The meeting took place in the parking lot of a shopping center, where federal agents were conducting surveillance. Bethany arrived with a briefcase containing cash that she had stolen from her elderly clients just days before. She was so focused on her plan to destroy me that she failed to notice the surveillance team positioned around the parking lot. "This should cover the additional fee we discussed," she said, handing Thompson the briefcase. "I need you to present your findings at the party on Saturday. Make it clear that my sister's business is fraudulent." "What if our investigation doesn't support that conclusion?" Thompson asked, testing her commitment to the plan. "Then make it support that conclusion," Bethany replied coldly. "I'm paying you to give me what I need." This conversation, captured on multiple recording devices and witnessed by federal agents, provided the final piece of evidence needed to arrest Bethany for bribery, embezzlement, and elder fraud. Agent Williams and her team spent the remaining time before the party coordinating with Thompson and Flynn to ensure Bethany's arrest would proceed smoothly. They arranged for several agents to attend the party undercover as family friends, positioning them to intervene when Bethany attempted to present her fabricated evidence. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Bethany would be allowed to begin her presentation to the family, publicly revealing her campaign against me. Then Thompson would announce that their investigation had actually uncovered evidence of criminal activity, but not by me. The federal agents would emerge from the crowd to arrest Bethany just as she was attempting to destroy my reputation. By Friday night, everything was in place. Bethany believed she was about to achieve her goal of humiliating me and driving me out of the family before disappearing with her stolen money. The investigators she had hired were preparing to expose her crimes instead. Federal agents were ready to make an arrest that would end her scheme permanently. I went to bed that Friday night nervous about the confrontation I knew was coming, completely unaware that my sister's plan to destroy me was about to become the instrument of her own downfall. Saturday arrived with perfect Colorado weather, sunny and warm with the kind of crisp mountain air that made everything seem more vivid and clear. Our grandmother's backyard was transformed with white tablecloths, colorful flowers, and strings of lights that would illuminate the celebration after sunset. Extended family members had traveled from as far as California and Texas to join the festivities, making this the largest family gathering we had had in years. I arrived early to help with final preparations, spending the morning arranging food tables and greeting relatives I hadn't seen in months. Our grandmother, radiant in a blue dress that matched her eyes, was clearly overjoyed to have her family together. At 80 years old, she moved with the energy of someone much younger, hugging everyone and making sure they felt welcome. Bethany arrived precisely on time, accompanied by two men in dark business suits whom she introduced as colleagues from the financial services industry. Thompson and Flynn played their roles perfectly, mingling with family members and making small talk about investment strategies and market conditions. None of our relatives suspected that these financial advisors were actually private investigators who had been studying our family for weeks. The first few hours of the party proceeded beautifully. Children played games on the lawn while adults caught up on each other's lives, shared stories, and enjoyed our grandmother's famous potato salad. Our Uncle Frank regaled everyone with tales of his recent fishing trip to Montana, while Cousin Sarah showed off photos of her new baby. I found myself relaxing despite my apprehensions about Bethany's plans. The warmth and love of our extended family created a buffer against whatever confrontation was coming. Several relatives asked about my business, and I was able to share genuine excitement about my recent successes without feeling defensive. As the afternoon progressed, our grandmother called for attention to make a speech. Standing on the back deck with all 40 family members gathered on the lawn below, she spoke about the importance of family bonds and the legacy of trust and love that she hoped to pass down through the generations. Family is the foundation everything else is built on, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. We may not always agree, and we may sometimes disappoint each other, but family means we never stop believing in each other's capacity for goodness. Her words about trust and belief hit me particularly hard. Knowing what was about to happen between Bethany and me, I found myself fighting back tears as I thought about how our grandmother's faith in family unity was about to be tested in the most painful way possible. After our grandmother finished speaking, Bethany stepped forward and asked for a moment to share some important news about family business. My stomach clenched as I realized this was the moment I had been dreading. I know this isn't the ideal time, Bethany began, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet yard. But sometimes family loyalty requires us to address difficult truths. Over the past few months, I've had growing concerns about some claims that have been made about business successes within our family. She gestured toward me, and I felt 40 pairs of eyes turning in my direction. My sister Hortense has been telling everyone about her amazing marketing company and these huge contracts she's supposedly landing. As a financial professional, I felt obligated to verify these claims, especially since they've been influencing family investment discussions. The silence in the yard was deafening. I could see confusion and concern on the faces of my relatives as they tried to understand what was happening. Our grandmother's expression shifted from joy to worry as she realized her birthday celebration was being turned into a family tribunal. I hired professional investigators to conduct an independent review of these business claims, Bethany continued, indicating Thompson and Flynn. I think it's important for everyone to hear what they discovered. This was the moment I had been dreading for weeks. I prepared myself for public humiliation, for the destruction of my credibility and my relationship with our family. I closed my eyes and waited for the blow to fall. But instead of Thompson beginning a presentation about my supposed fraud, I heard his voice say something completely unexpected. Mrs. Patterson, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding about what our investigation uncovered. I opened my eyes to see Thompson stepping forward with a serious expression, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking directly at Bethany with the kind of intensity that made the entire yard fall into complete silence. Our investigation into Walsh Marketing Solutions found absolutely no evidence of fraudulent activity, Thompson announced clearly. In fact, we found exactly the opposite. Miss, Walsh's business is completely legitimate, her contracts are real, and her financial records are clean. Bethany's face went white. That's not what I paid you to find, she said, her voice rising with panic. No, it's not, Thompson agreed. But what we did find was evidence of criminal activity, just not by the person you wanted us to investigate. That's when Agent Williams emerged from the crowd, followed by 3 other federal agents who had been positioned throughout the party disguised as family friends. The sight of badges and handcuffs created a wave of shocked gasps from our relatives. Bethany Patterson. Agent Williams said in a clear, authoritative voice, "You're under arrest for embezzlement, elder fraud, and attempted bribery of private investigators." The next few moments felt like they were happening in slow motion. Our grandmother sank into the nearest chair, her face pale with shock. Uncle Frank stepped protectively toward the children, not understanding what was happening but recognizing that something terrible was unfolding. Cousins and aunts began murmuring to each other, trying to process what they were witnessing. Thompson continued his explanation as Agent Williams prepared to read Bethany her rights. Our investigation revealed that Miss Patterson has been systematically stealing money from elderly clients at her financial firm. She hired us not to uncover fraud, but to create a distraction that would allow her to escape before a compliance audit exposed her crimes. The briefcase containing the stolen money that Bethany had used to bribe the investigators was presented as evidence, along with bank records showing the pattern of theft from client accounts. The scope of her crimes became clear as Agent Williams explained that Bethany had stolen nearly $200,000 from retired clients who had trusted her with their life savings. "I don't understand," our grandmother whispered, looking between Bethany and me with confusion and heartbreak. "Bethany, is this true?" For a moment, Bethany maintained her innocence, claiming she was being framed and that the investigators had been corrupted. But as the evidence was presented and her recorded admissions were played back, her facade completely crumbled. The most devastating revelation came when Agent Williams revealed that our grandmother had been targeted as Bethany's next victim. Miss Patterson had been pressuring her grandmother to invest her retirement savings in what she claimed were high-yield opportunities, but which were actually part of her embezzlement scheme. I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized how close our family had come to complete financial destruction. Bethany hadn't just been stealing from strangers. She had been planning to steal our grandmother's life savings as well. The scene that unfolded on our grandmother's lawn was unlike anything our family had ever experienced. As Agent Williams read Bethany her rights, the reality of her crimes began to sink in for everyone present. The sister, daughter, and granddaughter we thought we knew had been living a double life as a predator who targeted the most vulnerable members of society. Bethany's attempts to maintain her innocence became increasingly desperate as more evidence was presented. She tried to claim that she was being framed by the investigators, that the recordings were fabricated, and that she was actually the victim of an elaborate setup. But Agent Williams had brought copies of bank records, client statements, and recorded conversations that painted an undeniable picture of systematic fraud. The scope of Bethany's crimes was staggering. Agent Williams revealed that she had identified 12 victims, all senior citizens between the ages of 65 and 87. Among them were Dorothy Martinez, a 73-year-old widow with early-stage Alzheimer's who had lost her entire retirement fund, Robert Chen, an 80-year-old former teacher whose children had moved away and who relied on Bethany's advice to manage his late wife's inheritance, and Margaret Foster, a 78-year-old woman who had trusted Bethany with the life insurance money from her deceased husband. Each victim trusted Miss Patterson with their financial security, Agent Williams explained to our stunned family. She exploited their trust, their isolation, and in some cases their cognitive vulnerabilities to steal money they needed for medical care, housing, and basic living expenses. The most shocking revelation came when our grandmother spoke up in a trembling voice. "Bethany came to see me 2 weeks ago," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "She said she had found an investment opportunity that could double my retirement money within 6 months. She wanted me to withdraw everything from my savings account and give it to her to invest." The entire family turned to look at our grandmother, understanding dawning on their faces. Uncle Frank was the first to speak. "Mom, please tell me you didn't give her any money." "I didn't," Grandma replied, reaching for my hand. "Hortense had warned me about investment scams that target seniors. She told me to be suspicious of anyone promising quick returns, even family members. I trusted her advice more than I trusted Bethany's promises." I felt a mixture of relief and vindication wash over me. My business success had led me to research financial fraud as part of a marketing campaign for an elderly services client, and I had shared what I learned with our grandmother during one of our weekly coffee dates. That conversation had potentially saved her from losing everything. Agent Williams nodded approvingly. Miss Walsh's advice was correct. Elder fraud is one of the fastest-growing crimes in America, and perpetrators often target their own family members because of the inherent trust relationship. Bethany, now handcuffed and flanked by federal agents, finally broke down and admitted to her crimes. The weight of evidence against her was overwhelming, and her attorney would later advise her to accept a plea bargain rather than risk a trial that could result in even harsher sentencing. "I never meant for it to go this far," she sobbed, looking directly at our grandmother. "It started small, just a little extra money to cover my expenses. But then I couldn't stop, and I couldn't replace what I had taken." Uncle Frank, who had always been protective of our grandmother, stepped forward with anger in his voice. "You were going to steal from your own grandmother? From the woman who helped raise you and loved you unconditionally?" "I thought I could pay it back," Bethany replied weakly. "I thought if I could just discredit Hortense and get out of town before the audit, I could start over somewhere else and eventually make things right." "By destroying your innocent sister's reputation," Cousin Sarah demanded. "By breaking Grandma's heart with lies about Hortense." The full scope of Bethany's plan became clear as Thompson explained how she had intended to use the birthday party as a platform to publicly humiliate me before disappearing with the stolen money. She had calculated that by destroying my credibility, she could create enough family chaos to cover her escape while ensuring that no one would believe me if I tried to warn them about her crimes. She wasn't just planning to steal money, Flynn added. She was planning to destroy family relationships and trust that would have taken years to rebuild. As federal agents prepared to transport Bethany to jail, she made one final attempt to justify her actions. Hortense always got all the attention for her dreams and her creativity, she said bitterly. I worked twice as hard as she ever did, but she was always the one everyone believed in. Our grandmother stood up slowly, her voice carrying the weight of 8 decades of life experience. Bethany, dear, success isn't about who gets attention or who works harder. It's about character. Hortense succeeded because she never stopped being honest, even when things were difficult. You failed because you chose to lie and steal instead of asking for help. Those words seemed to hit Bethany harder than the handcuffs or the charges against her. For the first time, she seemed to understand that her crimes weren't just about money. They were about the fundamental choices that define who we are as people. As the federal agents led Bethany away, our family stood in stunned silence on the lawn where we had gathered to celebrate our grandmother's birthday. The afternoon that was supposed to be filled with joy and family unity had become a painful lesson about how jealousy and greed can destroy the bonds that are supposed to be unbreakable. But even in that moment of devastation, I could see the beginning of healing. Family members who had doubted my business success were now approaching me with apologies and support. Our grandmother, despite her shock and sadness, was holding my hand tightly and thanking me for the advice that had protected her savings. The truth had emerged in the most painful way possible, but it had emerged. And sometimes, that's the only way real healing can begin. 2 months after Bethany's arrest, our family was still processing the emotional earthquake that had shattered our understanding of who she really was. The legal proceedings moved swiftly because of the overwhelming evidence against her. She accepted a plea bargain that resulted in an 8-year federal prison sentence and an order to pay full restitution to her victims, though the financial damage would take years to completely repair. My business, vindicated by the investigation that was supposed to destroy it, began to thrive in ways I had never imagined. The story of how I had unknowingly saved my grandmother from becoming a victim of financial fraud spread through word of mouth in the senior community. I found myself being referred new clients who specifically wanted to work with someone they could trust. The tech startup contracts that Bethany had claimed were impossible led to partnerships with 3 more companies in the Denver area. Walsh Marketing Solutions grew from a one-person operation in my garage to a legitimate firm with 4 employees and an office in a downtown business district. Success built on honesty and genuine value turned out to be much more sustainable than anything built on deception. Our grandmother recovered from the shock of Bethany's betrayal with remarkable resilience. She moved into a senior living community closer to my home, partly for the social interaction and partly because she wanted to be near family members she could trust. We established a weekly routine of coffee dates where she shared stories from her past, and I updated her on my business developments. During one of these conversations, she revealed how close she had actually come to falling victim to Bethany's scheme. I had already filled out the bank withdrawal forms, she admitted. I was planning to give Bethany $40,000 the day after the party. Your warning about investment scams probably saved my entire retirement. The knowledge that my casual advice had protected our family's matriarch from financial ruin gave me a sense of purpose beyond just business success. I began volunteering with senior advocacy groups, teaching workshops about financial fraud prevention, and helping elderly victims navigate the aftermath of being scammed. This volunteer work led to an unexpected business opportunity. I partnered with a local nonprofit to create a specialized marketing firm that helps businesses owned by seniors compete in the digital marketplace. The foundation we established, funded partly by the success of my other business ventures, provides free marketing services to elderly entrepreneurs while educating the senior community about financial security. The healing process within our family happened gradually, through countless small conversations and shared experiences. Uncle Frank, who had initially been skeptical about my business claims, became one of my strongest supporters and referred several clients to my firm. Cousin Sarah invited me to create a marketing strategy for her consulting business, saying she wanted to work with someone whose integrity had been proven under fire. Perhaps most importantly, our family learned to have honest conversations about money, success, and support. We established new traditions around transparency and checking in with each other about financial decisions. No one would ever again be able to exploit the trust and isolation that had made Bethany's crimes possible. I found myself thinking often about the moment when everything changed at our grandmother's party. If Bethany had simply been happy for my success, if she had chosen to support rather than sabotage me, her crimes might never have been discovered. Her victims would have continued losing money, and our grandmother would have become the next target. In trying to destroy my credibility, Bethany had actually created the investigation that exposed her own criminal behavior. Her jealousy and need to tear me down had become the instrument of justice for the people she had victimized. The deepest life lesson that emerged from this experience was about the quiet power of truth. I had never tried to prove my success to my family through dramatic gestures or elaborate explanations. I had simply continued doing honest work, treating clients fairly, and building something real, one client at a time. When that foundation was tested by investigation and scrutiny, it proved to be solid. Bethany, in contrast, had built her life on deception and theft, always looking for the quick solution and the easy money. When that foundation was tested, it crumbled immediately and completely. Our grandmother, with the wisdom that comes from 8 decades of life experience, put it best during one of our coffee dates. "Integrity is the only inheritance that multiplies when shared," she said. Bethany tried to steal money, but what she really stole from herself was the chance to build something lasting and real. 6 months after the arrest, I received a letter from Dorothy Martinez, one of Bethany's victims. She had recovered most of her stolen money through the restitution order and wanted to thank me for the advice I had given our grandmother. She had heard the story through the senior community network and credited it with inspiring her to be more careful about financial decisions. "Your grandmother is lucky to have a granddaughter who looks out for her," she wrote. "But I think you're even luckier to have a grandmother who taught you that family means protecting each other, not taking advantage." That letter sits framed on my office wall as a reminder that success isn't just about what we achieve for ourselves, but about how our actions protect and support the people we love. Bethany's attempt to prove I was lying had accidentally exposed her own fraud, but more importantly, it had revealed the strength of family bonds built on honesty and mutual support. Today, Walsh Marketing Solutions continues to grow, but it's no longer just a business. It's a platform for helping others succeed honestly, for educating people about financial security, and for proving that integrity really is the foundation everything else is built on. My relationship with Bethany remains broken, probably forever. She writes letters from prison occasionally, expressing remorse and asking for forgiveness, but some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely. I hope she finds peace and redemption in her own way, but I've learned that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting the lessons her choices taught us. The story of how private investigators hired to prove I was lying accidentally exposed my sister's fraud has become a cautionary tale in our family, told to younger generations as a reminder that truth has its own power, and that authentic success is worth more than any shortcut. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone's attempt to discredit you actually revealed their own dishonesty? Family relationships can be complicated, and sometimes the people closest to us become our biggest challenges. I'd love to hear your thoughts about family loyalty, business ethics, and how we can support each other's success instead of tearing each other down. Please share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, I hope you'll take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real stories about overcoming betrayal and building authentic success. And please share this story with anyone who might benefit from learning about financial fraud prevention or the importance of family support. Sometimes our most painful experiences become our most powerful lessons. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that honesty really is the best foundation for both business success and family relationships. Take care of yourselves and the people you love.